I can say place where two or more bones they meet and they articulate with one another is called as joint. The study of joint is called as arthrology. A very important term. If somebody asks what is arthrology, just say it is study of joints. So you are studying the structure as well as the function of various joints, that is arthrology. What is ligament? Ligament is something that is going to provide B to B, that is bone to bone attachment is provided by the ligament. How is the ligament in nature? I can say ligament is tough fibrous connective tissue. Ligament, what it does, it keeps bone at proper position. This is very important word, bones at proper position. Your bones, if they are held in position, it is only because of ligament. And ligament avoids dislocation. If there is dislocation, then it can lead to fracture. What else ligament gives? It gives flexibility in rigid skeleton. It acts as a shock absorber. Most important part, ligament is going to act as a shock absorber. So if I draw one bone and I draw another bone, so this is bone to bone basically. So the bone to bone attachment like this, what you can see is nothing but it is the ligament, the one that is going to provide attachment from bone to bone. So remember, B to B attachment is nothing but it is the ligament. When I talk about classification of joints, there are three types of joints that we need to study. First is called as synarthrosis, which is fibrous joint, or even it is called as fixed joint. Even if I want, I can call it as immovable joint. Why it is immovable? Because it is fixed fibrous joint. Synarthrosis. See, when I use this word syn, basically syn itself means fused. So here everything will be fixed, no movement as such. Second is amphiarthrosis. It is just known as cartilaginous joint and it is slightly movable joint. So I can say it is little movable. It can move but not that much, so it is little movable. When I say amphiarthrosis, the word amphi basically means both. So there is a movement of bones little bit, at the same time they are stiff also. And the third one is called as diarthrosis. Dia means through. Through means there will be throughout movement. It can move the way it wants to move. Synovial joint, it is freely movable. So I can say it is maximum movable joint. So there are different areas in your body where these three types of joints are present: synarthrosis, amphiarthrosis, and the diarthrosis. Remember, synarthrosis is fixed, amphiarthrosis is slightly movable, and diarthrosis is freely movable. Like when you do bowling, you rotate your hand, the shoulder 360 degree. That is because of only diarthrosis. When I talk about synarthrosis, the word syn means fused. When I say arthrosis, it is basically joints. So the joints which are fused, they are called as synarthrosis. It is a fibrous joint. Bones are united by thin or dense white fibrous connective tissue. See, whenever we use this word white fibrous connective tissue, it is concerned with the word that is called as collagen. It means the white fibers are nothing but collagen. Remember, white fibers are collagen. And there is one more fiber to study, that is yellow fiber. And yellow fiber will always be elastin. It is a fixed joint, so there is no articulation. I can say there is no movement as such. So such kind of joint is called as synarthrosis. The line of fusion is called as sutures. Now sutures are found only in skull. Wherever you see the joints in the skull, those are called as sutures. Sutures of the skull, these are called as serrate suture. Why they are called as serrate suture? If I draw one skull, just to make you things easily understand. So here you will see all these zigzag lines, and these zigzag lines, they are dividing the basically skull into different parts. So these zigzag lines, they are called as sutures. It is found in flat and curved roofing bones of the skull. Articulating surface shows serrate margin. The word serrate means like this, zigzag. Types of sutures. Very first we have coronal suture. We all know that in the skull there will be different lobes present, so which we call it as frontal lobe. Then there is a parietal lobe, there is occipital lobe, and there is a temporal lobe. So in that same way, there will be sutures present that will divide these lobes basically. So there is first one is called as coronal suture, second one is called as sagittal suture, third one is lambdoidal suture, fourth one is lateral suture. The point here is where these sutures are present. The coronal suture is found between frontal bone and the parietal bone. So I can say between frontal bone and parietal bone, what you get is the coronal suture. So this suture, I can call it as coronal suture. Sagittal suture is between the two parietal bones. So between P and P, you will get sagittal suture. So here there is a parietal which is divided into two. So it is called as sagittal suture. Lambdoidal suture is present between parietal and the occipital bone. So between P and O, between the parietal and the occipital bone. So this suture that you can see is nothing but it is lambdoidal suture. The lateral suture is present between temporal and the parietal bone. So this is the temporal and the parietal. So this suture, I can call it as lateral suture. So remember, we have coronal suture between the frontal bone and the parietal bone. Sagittal suture is between two parietal bone. Lambdoidal suture is between the parietal and the occipital bone. Lateral suture is between the temporal and the parietal bone. So these are the different sutures that you normally see in the skull. What is the age for suture formation? So it is always at the age of 2, not initially. Why? So remember, when the baby is young, the brain has to grow in size. So logically, there is a small gap left behind. These gaps, they are called as fontanelles. Fontanelles are nothing but small gaps. And these gaps, logically, what they do? They provide space for brain to grow. So since the brain will grow up in size, then these sutures, basically the fontanelles, will also expand. And finally, at the age of 2, remember, at age of 2, all these fontanelles will get filled up and there will be formation of sutures. That's why if you remember, if any young baby is born, the mother basically of that baby till 2 years of his age or even more than that, she apply lots of oil on the head portion. Why? Because of the fontanelles. The fontanelles are present, so it applies. So there is different fontanelles. We have posterior fontanelle, then these are different sutures, lambdoidal suture. In young, skull basically leaves how many gaps? 6 gaps. Very important question for NEET. These 6 gaps are called as fontanelles, and these fontanelles, they give space for brain to grow. So here you can see these are the fontanelles. So we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and the 6. So there are 6 fontanelles present called as anterior fontanelle, posterior fontanelles, and these fontanelles, most important, they allow the brain to grow. Your brain has to grow up in size. So if the brain is growing in size, it is purely possible because of these fontanelles. Fontanelles are nothing but the most important opening that will help the basically brain to grow in size. This is very important part. And what if the fontanelle is not filled after 2 years of age? Then it will get filled up by 3 years of age, but it will be filled up for sure. Let's talk about the next part. This is the suture structure. So when I look at this, these are the two bones. In between them, there is a fibrous tissue present, and this fibrous tissue joins the two one. So there are different types of suture. First is called as butt joint. Butt joint means square edged. Look at this. This is square edged suture. These are found in two nasal bones. Then there is a scarf joint. Scarf joint is tapering, so it's like this. They are tapering, they are pointed. So that is scarf joint. It is found in various skull bones. We have lap joint. It is overlapping. So you can see here, this is the first bone and the lower and the second bone, they are overlapping each other. So it is a lap joint. It is found in temporal and the parietal bone. Then there is a serrate joint. Serrate means the zigzag one, the irregular one. This is called as zigzag, serrate. Irregular or interlocking. It is found in various skull bones. So there are different types of sutures. We have butt joint, scarf joint, lap joint, and we have serrate joint. So these joints are very important to understand, and the examples are very important. Let's understand the next fixed joint, that is called as syndesmosis. Syndesmosis is made up of fibrous connective tissue that connects the two bones. Example is tibia and fibula. Remember, tibia and fibula is in the category of fixed joint. They never move at all. They are fixed in their position. So here what you can see is syndesmosis. The gap in between is filled up by introsseous membrane. So look at this. This is tibia, the big one, fibula. Then we have introssus ligament that is holding the part. This part is nothing but the radius bone. We have this as the ulna. The bigger one, basically the fat one, is called as tibia, and the thin one is called as fibula. So this tibia, fibula, radius and ulna, remember tibia and fibula, radius and ulna, they are not showing any kind of movement. So basically it is one of synarthrosis. But in this synarthrosis, which type it is? So I can say it is syndesmosis. The word syn means fuse. So it is immovable joint. The next example is gomphosis. Gomphosis is related to teeth. See, your teeth is fixed in a socket, and that socket is basically called as jaw. And this teeth, which is filled up in the socket, it is not going to move. It is fixed in its position. And the reason why it is fixed, so that there is a kind of synarthrosis formation of fixed joint formation taking place. So such kind of teeth which is fixed in a jaw, they are called as thecodont teeth, means it is fixed in socket. So the root of teeth, then it's not the roof, it is the root of teeth which is fixed in a socket of jawbone. Look at this. This is our teeth that is visible from outside, but this much is entered inside the jaw. So this, what you can see here, this is the crown, the visible portion, and the one which has gone inside is the root. So these are all examples of fixed joint. They never move. So this becomes gomphosis. So remember, teeth, basically, it is going to show the example of gomphosis, and gomphosis is a fixed joint. So this is gomphosis. This is a socket, and we have the root of the tooth, and there is a ligament called as periodontal ligament that will hold it in position, and finally gomphosis. Here there will be gums also. So these are basically, they are called as gums also. So gomphosis is a type of fixed joint. So in fixed joint, first we saw sutures of the skull, then we talked about syndesmosis, that was tibia, fibula, radius and ulna. Then we talked about gomphosis, which is teeth and the socket. We are moving toward amphiarthrosis. Amphi basically means both. So I can say it is slightly movable, most important, and it is slightly fixed. So it shows very little bit of movement, that is called as amphiarthrosis. So it is a type of, you can say it is a cartilaginous joint. It has cartilage. It is neither fixed nor freely movable. Remember, amphiarthrosis, neither fixed and it is not freely movable. Line of fusion between the two articulating bone is called as synchondrosis. Very important word. Like in synarthrosis, the line of fusion was suture, but here the line of fusion of two articulating bone is called as synchondrosis. What is synchondrosis? The connecting material is hyaline cartilage. We all have studied in animal tissues that hyaline cartilage is the weakest cartilage. So synarthrosis, very soft, elastic, and it has minimum strength. There is a plate seen that is called as epiphyseal plate. So what this epiphyseal plate does? So first of all, it is present between epiphysis and diaphysis of long bone. So if I draw this as the long bone, for example, just to understand. So this area basically is called as epiphyseal plate. And this above area is called as epiphysis, and the lower area is called as diaphysis. So between the epiphysis and the diaphysis of long bone, you will see epiphyseal plate. It is a temporary joint in case of children. That's why when children are holded in hand, they should be holded with handled with proper care. Otherwise, their bones can easily dislocate. So this blue line that you can see is the epiphyseal plate, and this is epiphysis, and this is diaphysis. These are the different types of synchondrosis. So very first example that we have is the epiphyseal plate, which is having hyaline cartilage. Second one is the sternum. We all know that this is sternum and these are the ribs. So they are attached to each other. The joint between the first rib and the sternum is immovable. This one, the first rib and the sternum is immovable. Rest all they are slightly movable. Then we have symphysis. In symphysis, we have vertebral bone. This is nothing but your vertebral bone. 7th thoracic, sorry, 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 1 coccyx. They all are symphysis, basically slightly movable. So in synchondrosis, you can see here, these are all epiphyseal plates. The upper area is called as epiphysis and the lower area is called as diaphysis. We have the next one, symphysis. Symphysis, we can have pubic symphysis as one of the major part. Connecting material here again will be fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage is a kind of, you can say, strong cartilage. Fibrocartilage is opaque, strong, flexible due to presence of white fiber, and that white fiber is nothing but it is called as collagen. It is present between two pubic bones. We all have studied pelvic girdle. So here there is a pelvic girdle. This is also, there are two bones in the pelvic girdle, which is made up of three bones basically: ilium, ischium, and pubis. We have ilium, ischium, and pubis. So these two pubis bone basically they are joined at this point, and this point is called as symphysis, which is called as pubic symphysis. Pubic symphysis is not functional in male, but it is functional in female. It allows a very slight movement. In female, what role it plays, it increases the size of birth canal so that the baby's delivery takes place very easily. For easy parturition, the pubic bone has to stretch a little bit. Otherwise, it will become very difficult for the baby to take birth. So in female, pubic symphysis is functional, but it is not functional in case of male. In male, it is of no use. Look at this. This is called as pubic symphysis. So remember, this is pubic symphysis. And what we have here, this is the obturator foramen, very important part. These three bones, this is what is called as ilium, then we have ischium, then we have pubis. So ilium, ischium, and pubis, they all join together, and finally they form a cavity here. This cavity where this bone is fixed, it is like this. So this area is all cavity. So this cavity is called as acetabulum, one of the important cavity that will provide place for femur. Your leg bone is going to fit in this cavity. So this is pubic symphysis, functional in case of women, not men. Intervertebral joint. Joints are present between the centers of adjacent vertebrae of backbone. So remember this. Connecting disc is fibrocartilaginous. Remember, it helps in shock absorption. Somebody hits you on the back, the shock will be absorbed because of this cartilage. It protects the spinal cord. The vertebral bone protects the spinal cord. It makes the spinal cord bit flexible. You can move little bit up and down. See, if you move in this direction, this area gets suppressed. If you move in this direction, this area gets suppressed. So it allows slight movement, not that much. Then we have the most important joint that is called as diarthrosis. Dia basically means you can say through or you can say freely. These are freely movable joints. The joints which are freely movable, they are called as diarthros. There are many joints present in diarthrosis. The very first, let's talk about this. It is a synovial joint. Why synovial joint? Because it is filled up by a fluid that is called as synovial fluid. Even it is called as perfect joint. It is the most evolved, freely movable type of joint. Just remember this, most evolved and freely movable type of joint. Diarthrosis, in your hand, if you see the thumb, there is a saddle joint. Then there is a hinge joint, that is elbow. Even there is a pivot joint, that is your skull. So these are all freely movable. They move, you can say, more than 90 degree. Any bone that moves more than 90 degree, you can say it is under the category of diarthrosis. We have ellipsoidal joint, that is your wrist bone. Basically, it is also synovial joint. Ball and socket joint, your hip joint basically. Then the gliding joint. These are all different types of joints that we need to study. Let's talk about very first and the very important joint that is called a synovial joint. These synovial joint, it consists of certain important parts. So if I draw a synovial joint, a typical synovial joint, I can say It has a bone. First, there are two bones present. On the bone, there will be a cartilage. So these are all cartilage. These cartilaginous pad are very important, because if they gets get dissolved basically, then what will happen? Here, the two bones will combine with each other, and when two bones join to each other, it results into huge joint pain. Now this is the ligament, which is providing bone to bone attachment. And then finally we have this. This is the synovial membrane, and this synovial membrane is going to form a cavity that is called a synovial cavity. And this cavity is filled up by a fluid. What is this fluid called as? It is called a synovial fluid. This is how you can draw a very typical diagram for synovial joint. You can say this is bone. Again, we can say this is bone. This is nothing but ligament providing bone to bone attachment. And on the surface of bone, what you have? You have cartilage. Then there is a membrane, very important one, called as synovial membrane. The synovial membrane is responsible for producing a fluid. That fluid is called as synovial fluid. This fluid consists of very special enzyme called as hyaluronic acid. So remember, there is hyaluronic acid present, and this hyaluronic acid will help in providing nourishment to this cartilaginous pad, and this is how all the synovial joint will be. So let's understand this. Synovial joint consists of synovial cavity, synovial fluid, synovial membrane, capsule ligament. So it has synovial cavity, synovial fluid, synovial membrane, capsule ligament, and last, articulating surface, which is covered by hyaline cartilage. Let's look at this. This is the diagram for a typical synovial joint. First, what we need to understand, this is bone. This is also bone. Both the bones are attached to each other by the help of ligament. So bone to bone attachment is ligament. Then on the bone, what you get? You get articular cartilage, and that articular cartilage is nothing but the hyaline cartilage. Then there is a covering called as synovial membrane. This synovial membrane contains a cavity that is called as synovial cavity, and the cavity is filled by synovial fluid, very important word. And finally, fibrous layer, synovial membrane together make articular capsule. So this is how a typical synovial joint looks alike. So this is the simplest form of synovial joint that you can see. We have the bone, we have the cartilage, we have the ligament, we have the synovial lining basically, then we have the synovial cavity, which is filled by synovial fluid. So this is a typical synovial joint. Same thing here, same diagram representing again in a different way. Joint capsule, synovial membrane, joint fluid, hyaline cartilage, and the epiphyseal bone. So these are different types of joints that we normally see. So this is a cross section of real human where the hand bone was cut. This is hand bone and a slice was taken. So this is synovial joint. Let's talk about the very first synovial joint. So when I talk about very first synovial joint, it is ball and socket joint. The point here is, when I say ball and socket joint, what exactly it means. So the ball and socket joint, basically, it is like one bone is going to act like a ball. So let us take this to be the ball, and the other bone will be acting like a socket. So it is like this. So one bone is acting like a ball and other bone is acting like a socket. That is what is ball and socket joint. So the spear of the head of one bone fits into the cup-shaped socket of other bone. So I can say this is the spear of one bone, and this is nothing but the cup-shaped socket of another bone. These joints, they are prone for easy dislocation. They can be easily separated or broken. So under accident, it can lead to fracture, separation on sudden strain. If you give a sudden strain to it, it can lead to separation. It shows multi-axial movement. Multi-axial movement means the ball and socket joint will show either 360-degree movement or 180-degree movement. 180-degree movement is in the hip joint, because you can move your leg only 180-degree, straight movement basically. But shoulder will show you 360-degree movement, because when you do bowling, that is a 360-degree movement. So this is the first ball and socket joint between the humerus and the cavity that is present in the scapula. What is this cavity called as? This cavity is called as glenoid cavity. So in scapula there is a cavity that is called as glenoid cavity, and this cavity is occupied by this humerus head, and finally it forms a joint that is able to move like this 360 degree. That is what is ball and socket joint. Very first we have the next one, femur. So now femur is their leg bone. So this is the head of the femur, which is going to fit into the cup shaped cavity. See this space that is there here, this is all filled up by specialized fluid. So this red area, I can say it is filled up by synovial fluid. So this is ball and socket joint, where there is a pelvis bone which is acting like a ball. So we need to remember here one thing, very important, that this bone basically, it gives you understanding. So this is ball and socket joint, and it shows 180-degree rotation. Very important. Like for example, if this is your leg, just for example I'm drawing one leg for you. So this is your leg. You can just take your leg up to here, or at the max you can bend it till here. You cannot take it till here. So it can show only how much degree? We can say 180-degree of rotation, nothing else, not more than this. Hinge joint. Hinge is like, you see a door. On the door there is a hinge. For example, your hand, this shows a hinge joint. So you can move your hand till here straight, or at the max till here straight. It means it shows only 180-degree of movement. Remember, one bone is of spoon shaped. Surface of one bone fits into the concave cavity of other bone. So one bone will be spoon shape, and other bone will be of concave cavity. It has a strong collateral ligaments, and they are not prone to easy dislocation. Just remember this. It resists dislocation, that is hinge joint. Hinge joint always shows uniaxial movement, means it moves in one direction. Example, we have hand bone, that is elbow, and the kneecap. Kneecap shows such kind of thing. So here in the diagram you can see there is humerus and the ulna, and the hinge joint is seen. So when I talk about this, look at this diagram. Now this diagram will help you to understand actual hinge joint. So here we see humerus, that is the hand bone. We have the radius, and we have the ulna. Ulna has this process which is spoon shaped. So this process, what you can see here, it is called as olecranon process. And this olecranon process allows the movement. Now you can move your hand only in straight this way. So it shows only 180-degree of movement, nothing else. We have this diagram, hinge joint. So look at this, radius, ulna, we have the cartilage. So here you can see there is a bicep, we have the tricep, we have the humerus, the joint capsule basically with the synovial fluid. So this is hinge joint showing 180-degree of movement. So just remember this. Let's talk about the next one, gliding joint. Now when I use this word gliding, it simply means that the bones basically they are gliding on each other. So the articular bone in gliding joint, it permits for gliding or sliding. Like we all have window, sliding window. So this sliding window slides over each other. So then that same way the gliding joint also will show such kind of joint. These joints, they allow non-axial. It means there is no access to the movement, which is neither back forth nor side to side, but it is irregular. So it is going to show what? Irregular movement. It will not move front and back or side by side. It will show any irregular movement, that is gliding joint. The articulating surface is convex, and since it is convex, the best part is the friction is avoided. Example, the best example is intercarpal joints. How many carpals are there? We know that there are total 8 carpals. These are the examples of gliding joint. Look at this. These bones, they are gliding on each other. This is called as gliding joint. So this is the carpals. This is carpal number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So there are total 8 carpals. So in between this area, the 2 lines, so I can say 1, 2, 3, 4. another 1, 2, 3, 4. So like this, between them, whatever joint is there, that is called as gliding joint. It moves. Next, we have something called as condyloid joint. Very important. These are also called as ellipsoidal joints. So when I say ellipsoidal joint, it means what? One bone will be oval shaped. The other bone will be elliptical shaped cavity of other bones. So it is called as condyloid joint. These joints allow biaxial movement. These joints basically they allow biaxial movement. That is forward, backward, side to side, but not rotation. In condyloid joint, there will be forward movement, there might be backward movement, there can be side by side movement, but there is no rotation. It means you cannot rotate that joint, which is condyloid joint. Example for this is radius carpal, metacarpopharyngeal joint. These are the examples of condyloid joint. So let's take a look at the diagram. Condyloid joint, you can see here there is a radius, then there is a carpal and the metacarpal. They show condyloid joint. This is gliding joint between the two bones. Condyloid joint is seen between radius and the carpal. So look at this. This is the radius. There is articulating cartilage surface, then ligament, bone to bone attachment. This is the cavity that is called as synovial cavity, surrounded by membrane called synovial membrane, and the carpal. So this joint that you can see here, this joint is called as condyloid joint. It will show forward, backward, side by side movement. But most important, in condyloid joint, there is no rotation. You cannot rotate it. Next, we have saddle joint. Saddle joint is like when you see earlier days, Rishi Munis, they used to carry something like this with them. And this is a saddle basically, on which they used to keep their hand and do meditation. So articulating surface of bones are saddle shaped. That is, each bone has concave and convex area. Each surface is convex in one plane and concave perpendicular plane. Means what? If I draw this like this, so the other bone will not be placed like this. It will be something like this. So it is at 90 degree to each other. It allows greater freedom of movement. Like for example, your thumb. Humans evolved more because their thumb became free. They developed opposable thumb, and this opposable thumb allowed them to do greater movement. So joint allows what? Biaxial movement, front and back. Example for this is carpo-metacarpal joint of thumb. Saddle joint has great evolutionary significance, as I told you. Because of the separation of the thumb, we are able to move things properly. There is a great grasping power of fingers. We developed a skillful work like writing, drawing, and painting. Without thumb, you cannot even hold a pen. And even if you hold a pen, you will not be able to write continuously for longer duration. So this is also one of the important joint, saddle joint. So it is thumb, trapezium, and the metacarpal. Look at this, how they are placed. One is placed like this, other one is like this. So they are placed at 90 degree to each other. That is very important part. We have this, the first metacarpal bone, and we have the joint of the thumb, and there is a trapezium. So we have carpal. So remember, saddle joint is between the first metacarpal. The first metacarpal is nothing but your thumb and the trapezium. So this is your metacarpal. Look at this. It is having this way cavity, and the other bone is placed like this. So they are placed at 90 degree to each other. So this is saddle joint. The next and the last joint is pivot joint. Most important, that pivot joint is freely movable joint. And this pivot is seen in case of skull. So if you remember, there was atlas and axis. The atlas is fixed to the skull, but the axis moves. What was present in the axis? So the axis was showing a process. This process was called as odontoid process. And because of this process, what happens? The skull moves. And most important, this is your atlas. So on this, the skull is placed like this. So you can, with your skull, either say yes or you can say no, nothing else. Articular surface, central bony pivot, then surrounding by osteoligamentous ring. Here one bone remains fixed while other bone rotates freely around the pivot shaped process of fixed bone. So it is allows uniaxial movement. By the help of skull, you can say yes or no, it shows rotation. Example of this joint is atlantoaxial joint. Atlas moves along with skull around the pivot like odontoid process. I told you in the axis you will get odontoid process, and that process will help to move. So the joint allows rotational movement of the skull. So you can rotate your skull, but you cannot rotate 360-degree, 90-degree only. You can touch your chin from one end of the shoulder to the other end of the shoulder, nothing more than that. So this, what you can see here is the atlas, the first one. The lower one is called as axis. Axis has a process. This process is called as odontoid process. And finally, this is your skull. Remember, skull is basically fixed on the atlas. So atlas will show no movement. No movement means it will move with the skull, but axis is going to show movement. This is called as pivot joint. Only one example is there, that is atlas. So this pivot joint example, what we have, it has odontoid process. There is a spelling mistake. It is odontoid process, then transverse ligament, atlas, and the axis. This is the example for pivot joint. We have the next important one, muscular movement. Now when I say muscular movement, it is connected with the word muscles. We all have studied in animal tissue chapter that there are three types of muscle. One is called as voluntary muscle, second one is called as involuntary muscle, and the third one basically is called as cardiac muscle. So there are three types of muscles involved: voluntary, involuntary, and cardiac. So muscular tissue is characterized by very important property, that is contractility. The muscles has the ability to contract. Remember, muscles can only pull, but they cannot push. So three types of movement we see: voluntary movement, involuntary movement, and cardiac. See, voluntary movement is shown by skeletal muscle. This is very important part. When I say involuntary movement, it is shown by non-skeletal muscle. So it is non-skeletal muscle. And cardiac movement is seen in case of heart. So the heart muscles are shows this kind of muscular tissue. There are certain important points that has to be kept in mind when we are talking about muscular tissues. So what are these muscular tissues made up of? So we say that muscular tissues, they are made up of thin, elongated, contractile muscle fiber. Thin, elongated, contractile muscle fibers are the composition of muscular tissue. In short, I can say that the muscular tissue is nothing but it's a contractile tissue. This tissue is responsible for one of the very important factor that is called as contraction. And the unit of contraction is nothing but it is a sarcomere. Sarcomere is regarded as unit of contraction. When we talk about muscular tissues, it has ability to contract. It has ability to contract, and it is contracting due to protein. There are specialized proteins present in our muscular tissue, and those proteins are nothing but, I can say, it is myosin plus actin. So this myosin and actin plays an important role. Now when we talk about this muscular tissue, they have muscle nerves. So we can say that it plays an important role. First of all, muscular tissue plays an important role in movement and locomotion. So it plays an important role in movement and locomotion. This muscular tissue basically They are innervated by nerve fibers. So we can say that the muscle fibers are innervated. Muscle fibers are innervated by the nerve fibers. Muscle fibers, they are innervated with nerve fibers. So basically there are lots of nerve fibers present which are seen in the muscles. So we can say that these muscle fibers or the muscular tissue is most important is it is vascular. Your muscles, they are having blood vessels. Whenever we talk about weight, we need to understand that 40% of body weight is due to muscle. So your body weight 40% is just because of muscles. Now coming to the most important part, whenever we draw any muscular tissue, I put it in this way. So it has two important components. First, it will have the outermost layer. So I put it in this way that this outermost layer that you see outside, see this reddish layer that you are observing is nothing but it is the outermost layer. So the outermost layer that you will see normally in the muscular tissue, it is called as sarcolemma, and inside there is a fluid present. So this fluid is basically called as sarcoplasm. So I can say all the muscular tissue, they will have the outermost layer that is called as sarcolemma, and inner cytoplasm is present, and that cytoplasm is called as sarcoplasm. This becomes very important explanation that we need to understand. Whenever we talk about types of muscular tissue, there are three types of muscular tissue. One is called as striated muscular tissue. The second one basically is called as non-striated muscular tissue. And the third one is called as gland cardiac tissue. So we have striated muscular tissue, we have non-striated muscular tissue, and the third one is cardiac muscular tissue. Point here is what is the difference between these all three. So we are going to study one by one so that all your doubts will be solved with respect to this. So very first we are going to talk about a striated muscle fiber. So when I talk about striated muscle fiber, or even I can say striated muscular tissue, it's all up to you. So what we are going to do, we are going to just talk about striated. Striated means that these are those muscular tissues basically which are attached to bones. They are attached to bones in our head, neck, trunk, even limb region. When I say limb region, it is basically your hands and legs. This striated muscular tissue is also known as what? It is called as skeletal tissue. Now this skeletal tissue is voluntary in nature, so it is called as voluntary muscles. So when I say voluntary muscles, it means that they are in control. Like movement of your hand and movement of your legs, everything is under control. So it is voluntary muscles. So what I will be doing, I will be taking it right from the scratch. So I take a bone. To this bone, I will attach a muscle. Let us take this to be the muscle fibers present. Okay. So these are all the muscle fibers, your bicep. So we are going to just take out one muscle fiber. So I take out this, and this one muscle fiber, when I zoom in, I see lots of different fibers present. So like this, I will see inside. In short, I can say that this muscular fiber, this muscle is showing very important stuff that is called as striations. So striations are nothing but, I can say that they show alternate dark and light bands. When I say alternate dark and light band, basically it is like zebra, black, white line. So let me draw one diagram for you where you will understand everything properly. So I draw this. Now this is the elongated muscle fiber. So here I can say that the cells here will be multinucleated. This is very important. They are multinucleated. So this is what is the diagram. Now this diagram is at microscopic level. So you can observe all these striations and everything only under microscope. And when I observe it very carefully, what I can see, I will see striations like this. So this is alternate dark band and light band. So striated muscular tissues are those muscular tissues which are in our control. They are voluntary muscular tissues. They are attached to the bones by the head, neck region, hand and legs. The muscular striated muscular tissue is also called as skeletal tissue. And when I look at this structure, I find that they show lots of striations. So these what you're observing is nothing but striations. It has alternate dark band and the light band, dark band and the light band. And inside you will see a nucleus, but it is multi-nucleated structure. So I put it this way. This all basically becomes the nucleus. It will have the outermost covering that is called as sarcolemma, and inside the sarcolemma there will be fluid present. That fluid is basically called as sarcoplasm. So this is all what I am drawing is nothing but the nucleus which is present. So if I have to do the labeling, very first point that I will say that there is the outermost covering. The outermost covering is called as sarcolemma. This becomes my very first point. So if somebody asks what is sarcolemma, I will say sarcolemma is nothing but it is a thick membranous sheath. So this thick membranous sheath is nothing but outermost layer of the striated muscular tissue. And inside there will be fluid present. That fluid I can call it as sarcoplasm. So sarcoplasm is nothing but it is generally called as the cytoplasm of the striated muscular tissue. And there is nucleus present, so I can say nucleus is present, and it is not present in each cell, it is generally present. So this nucleus, when we will talk about it, we will say that the nucleus is peripherally placed. So it is peripherally placed, and at the same time the striated muscular tissue is multinucleated. It has many nucleus present in it. And what we can see is this all, if I take this line, this is nothing but striations. So I take this line out, this is nothing but it is striations. All these striated muscular tissue, they are going to show alternate dark and light band. So this alternate dark and light band basically is the striations. Now we are going to take out one small striation. So let us take it in this way. I take out this area, only this much area I will take it out, and I will try to zoom. Means I am going to see this part, only this part. So this part, alternate light band dark band, but this we have to magnify, we have to zoom, and we have to see in detail what is present inside the striated muscular tissue. So what I will be doing, I will be zooming in to see what is there inside. So let's take a look here. Now this I draw as the bands. Now they are zoomed version, so I put it in this way. This area I take it as the dark band because we are zooming that area also. So this area is called as dark. Then there is a light band. Again there will be dark band present. So this is the dark band. Again there is a light band. There is a dark band. So I can say there is alternate dark and light band present here. So this area, let's take it as light, and this we take it as a dark band. So there is alternate dark and light band present basically in the case of striated muscular tissue. Now what we need to learn here, we need to understand one thing, that this band I call it as a dark band, and this band I call it as a light band. So why it is called as dark band, why it is called as light band? So we have to understand that dark band is dark because it does not allows the light to pass through it. Dark band has other name also. It is also called as A band. A band, the full form is anisotropic band. And this anisotropic band is dark band because it does not allow light to pass. So when I focus light on it, the light will not travel through this dark band. And when we talk about light band is also called as I band. Now what is the full form of I band? It is called as isotropic band. And what is the role of this isotropic band? This isotropic band is called as light band because it allows light to pass through. If the light is passing through this region, then I can say it is nothing but it is light band. So light band is called as I band, dark band is called as A band. Now in the light band, you will see a dark line. In the light band, you will see a dark line. So there is a dark line present in the light band. So here also and here also. It is present here also. I will say that in the light band, there is a dark line present. What is this dark line called as? So I will say that this dark line is nothing but it is called as Z line. In the light band, there is a dark line present called as Z line, or even this Z line is also called as crosses membrane. Distance between the two Z lines. So here is also one Z line. This is also one Z line. So the distance between the two Z line is known as sarcomere. So I will say that this distance here between two Z line, it is called as sarcomere. And this sarcomere is nothing but it is unit of contraction. If the muscles are contracting, it is purely because of sarcomere. So what is sarcomere? The distance between the two Z line, that is called as sarcomere. And as there is a dark band, a dark line in the light band, in that same way, in the dark band, there will be a light line present. See this line. There is a light line present in between the dark band also. So this that is present is called as H line. So the dark band also consists of a light region that is called as H line. This H line basically stands for Hansen's line. It is also called as Hansen's line. So this is all what you should know about the striated muscular tissue. So very first, we are going to talk about there is a covering called as sarcolemma, thick membranous sheath. Inside there is a cytoplasm called as sarcoplasm. In the sarcoplasm, the nucleus is present. Nucleus is peripherally placed. It is multi-nucleated structure. And in this there is striations present. The striations are alternate dark band, light band, dark band, light band. When I take out the striations and zoom in, what I will see that I will see there is a dark band. The dark band is also called as A band, which is anisotropic band. It will not allow the light to pass through it. The light band is also called as I band, isotropic band, allowing the light to pass through it. In the light band, there is a dark line. That dark line is called as Z line. Even it is also called as crosses membrane. The distance between the two dark line is called as sarcomere, which is unit of contraction. And in the dark band, you will see some light region or light line present that is called as H line, or even it is called as Hansen's line. After this, we have to talk about the next part, that is non-striated muscle fiber. So when I say non-striated muscle fiber, non-striated muscular tissue. So when I say non-striated muscular tissue, it's very much clear that it is not going to show any kind of striations. No striations. It means they are not attached to the bones. They are directly attached in between muscle to muscle contraction. So where it is seen? So I can say it is seen in wall of all visceral organs. Visceral organ means what? The important organs. Like your stomach is one of the visceral organ. Even your intestine, whether small or large, is one of the visceral organ. Even the urinary bladder is one of the visceral organ. And the most important part for non-striated muscular tissue is that these are involuntary muscles. When I use this word involuntary muscles, it simply means that they are not in control. Contraction of urinary bladder is not in control. The peristaltic movement of esophagus food is not in control. Churning of stomach is not in control. And they are not attached to the muscle. Therefore, they are called as non-skeletal muscles. So these are also called as non-skeletal muscle. Now, if I draw the diagram for the non-striated muscular tissue, so how will I draw? I will draw spindle-shaped cells. So all these are spindle-shaped. They all are somewhat like this. They all are elongated, spindle-shaped. Now these spindle-shaped cells, they are uninucleated, because what we saw for striated that they are multinucleated, but non-striated one they are uninucleated, and inside there will be a nucleus present. So each cell is going to have a single nucleus present, and inside you will get the dot dot, that is nothing but the sarcoplasm. So whenever it comes to these cells of non-striated muscular tissue, what you need to remember, first point, that the cells are spindle shaped. Spindle shaped cells, they have the outermost covering that is called as sarcolemma, and inside there will be a cytoplasm, so I call it as sarcoplasm. The cells are almost spindle shaped, and in the center what is present, so there is a nucleus present. So this nucleus is present inside. Now let's understand the structure. So whenever it comes to structure, we will say they are elongated, all the cells, they are slender, means they are thin, and they are spindle shaped. The next part is all the cells, they are arranged in sheath, and this sheath basically is bounded by sarcolemma, that is the outermost covering. Here no striations, it means alternate dark and light band, everything is absent. You will not see any kind of striations here. And most important, single nucleus is present. Single nucleus is present in cell, and this they are innervated by ANS. What is ANS? It is autonomous nervous system, the system that is not in our control. It has parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves. It shows very slow contraction and relaxation. Here I can say that the non-striated muscular tissues, basically they do not get fatigued, they never get tired. But striated muscular tissue, they get fatigued, they get tired, because there is very fast contraction and relaxation. Here example is I can say peristaltic movement. So this peristaltic movement is nothing but one of the example of non-striated muscular tissue. So whenever it comes to striated muscular tissue, you need to understand that it gets easily fatigued, because when we run our muscles gets tired and we stopped. So this is the characteristic of striated muscular tissue. But the non-striated muscular tissue, there is no fatigueness, they keep on working continuously. This is all for non-striated muscular tissue. Next that we need to talk about is the cardiac muscular tissue. When I say cardiac muscular tissue, as the word suggests, cardiac, it is connected to one very important parameter, that is heart. Now we might be wondering that striated and non-striated is clear, then why heart is studied separately? The reason behind this is that the heart muscles, they no doubt they are involuntary. The beating of the heart is not in our control. So that is involuntary muscles, but at the same time these hearts, they show striations. It means it has the property of both Involuntary muscles is non-striated, striations is striated. The heart shows the property of both the striated and the non-striated muscles. So here what I can say, that this cardiac tissue, first of all, where they are found in the wall of heart, or even I can call it as myocardium. They are present here. And next what we can say, that the fibers of cardiac muscles are intermediate. Fibers are intermediate of striated and non-striated muscles. So of striated and non-striated muscles, these fibers are intermediate. They have a short branch fiber. So all the cardiac muscles, they have a short branch fiber. At the same time, very important point to be kept in mind, I will use different color, that in cardiac muscular tissue there is a poor sarcolemma. It means they do not have the covering of the sarcolemma. They will have basically sarcoplasm. So poor means it has but very less. So what happens to those less sarcolemma? So thickening of sarcolemma takes place. Thickening of sarcolemma takes place at intercalated disc. So there is something called as intercalated disc formation, and this intercalated disc results in the formation of the sarcolemma condenses there and form intercalated disc. This intercalated disc, how it appears, so I can say it appears like zigzag line. So like when I draw the diagram, you will understand more clearly. So let us take it in this way. This is the diagram for cardiac muscular tissue. So I draw it in this way. It will have the first part. So let us take this first, second, then we have the third one, we have the fourth, and we have the fifth. I take it in this way. This I put it here like this. These are all blood sinusoids, basically the blood fibers that we normally see. And the sarcoplasm, they are going to interconnect. So we will take it later. Let me first draw the striations. So these are all nothing but striations present. Striations means what? Alternate dark band and the light band. So here there is striations. So here I can see all these are nothing but striations. So let me draw it because it will take time to draw. All these that you are observing is nothing but the striations. Striated muscular tissue property. Even though it is striated, heart muscles, they are involuntary. They are not in our control. And since they are not in our control, we studied separately. Why? It is intermediate of both striated and the non-striated muscular tissue. And what happens to those sarcolemma? So sarcolemma condenses, it forms a zigzag line structure. So this zigzag line structure that you're observing is nothing but sarcolemma. And this sarcolemma is forming a structure that is called as intercalated disc. So this green color line that I am drawing, the zigzag line, it is nothing but it is the formation of intercalated disc. And in between, definitely there is blood vessels present. So I will show blood vessels separately. So this is all blood vessels. So this red part is nothing but the blood vessels present. Now we have to draw the nucleus because they have nucleus present. So this is the nucleus. So this is how you can draw the diagram for cardiac muscular tissue in a very simple way. Let's do the labeling also so that things becomes easy to understand. Very first, I will say about this. There is a light and dark band. So this light and dark band are nothing but the striations. Here what you can see, I will say it is blood sinusoids. Then after blood sinusoids, what is present here? This is the nucleus. So there is a nucleus present in the cell. These are this orange color ones, they are nothing but they are myofibrils, responsible for contraction and relaxation. And this green color one is nothing but it is intercalated disc. Whenever we talk about heart, we need to understand that contraction of cardiac muscle, or even I can say the beating of the heart, it is initiated at a point. Now there is a point present in the heart, so we can say it initiated from particular point in heart, and that particular point in heart is called as SA node. This SA node is also called as a pacemaker. What is the full form of SA node? So it is sinoatrial node, and this sinoatrial node is responsible for heart beating. And we need to understand that cardiac muscles have nerve fibers. So cardiac muscles have nerve fibers, and these nerve fibers make the heart neurogenic. Our heart is neurogenic as well as myogenic. Neurogenic means it beats by the help of certain impulse, and myogenic means it will beat even when it is removed outside the body. If you remove your heart and keep it on the table or anywhere, still it will beat, and the beating results into important stages. One is called as contraction of heart and relaxation. So this contraction and relaxation of the heart is nothing but it is heartbeat. One contraction, one relaxation makes one heartbeat. So contraction of the heart is called as systole, and relaxation of the heart is called as a diastole. One systole and one diastole is going to make one heartbeat. So this is all what you should know about the cardiac muscular tissue.